Hello, Jimmy here, O'Reilly. So I have a Ford Transit Connect, and what's happened with this one is for the last 3 years he's had an ongoing issue where the DPF light comes on saying drive to clean, and it's been back more than a dozen times for repairs, but it never has lasted more than 2 to 3 days. 3 days was the maximum that the light stayed clear. So it's had NOx sensors, DPF pressure sensor. Then it went back to Ford and they put a new DPF in it, but 2 days later the light came back on, drive to clean, and it's got a P2002 code. So he brought it back, they put a new sensor on it again and regened it, and then he brought it back again, the fault came back in, then they found a split boost hose, which was probably going to be the one at the top here. Okay, so inside the van here, 53,000 miles on it. So I've just connected up the diagnostic machine there, so it's beeping. 53,000 miles, but he said for the last over 2 years he's been driving with the engine light on. Every time it goes back to Ford, within 2 days the light comes back on. So it's never been fixed really. Okay, we'll use the launch Euro Tab 3 Intelligent Diagnostic. Okay. So we've got one fault there straight away. Looks like we've got a lot of systems that aren't fitted, so the grey ones. Okay, that's done. Speaker control module configuration. So this is the sort of engine side here. We've got the BCM powertrain and control module. P2002, not good. So it has had a DPF, he said, but it's been around about a year ago now, but 2 days after the DPF was fitted, the light and the code did come back. So let's look at the differential pressure. It's really hard to even judge it by the differential pressure on these, because sometimes the pressure can look quite good. We can't find differential pressure. Let me see, what else have we got? DP, yeah, let's just click all of that. Distance between regions, inlet pressure maybe, diesel particle filter inlet pressure. See if we got soot. Anything about soot. Distance travelled between the last and second regen, 454 kilometers. See, normally you'd say there's something wrong there, but I know all of these vans are a little bit erratic like that with the numbers. So according to this, DPF looks good really, you know. There's no data here that looks like there's anything wrong with the DPF. It's on 24%. Let's hold the revs up at say 3000 RPM. There we go. We've got about 60 millibars, which is okay. So one of the clear points for this is going to be the finger in the hole test, and if I give it a hard rev, if we see it push black smoke out, we know there's an issue. So we'll give it a couple of hard revs. Yep, you can see little puffs of smoke there. Can't really see it on camera. definitely leaving little puffs of smoke out there. It looks like it's left a fuel patch. Is that where the exhaust is? No, it's slightly over here. Now the last one I done did leave a big black sooty patch on the floor. This one I haven't. Let's get my finger in there and see what we're looking at. Sorry. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera there. So that exhaust there, you can see there. Now you could say some of that could have been left behind from the old DPF, but it's been over a year ago. Okay, so it looks like he's got a cracked DPF again. I did mention on one of my videos before, you know, we had a little chat about DPF deletes and remaps. So as everybody knows, I don't really agree with DPF deletes. I don't agree with static force regens or any of that sort of thing. Of course, cleaning the DPF is the best way to go about it. Yeah, and if you want to spend the extra time taking off the DPF, no, I did get some comments before saying you should take the DPF off. It's the best way to clean it. Probably agreed, yeah. Might get a slightly better clean if you take the DPF off and put it on a machine that costs 50 grand. But the turnaround on that is very slow. You're going to be without a car for a week or a few days at least, and there's a lot more labour involved. Yeah. So anyway, but we're just going off track a little bit there. But just thought I'd give a little bit of information, a little bit of chat into this video if I can, because it's pretty straightforward. We've seen this before. But what I want to talk about now is, you know, I don't agree with DPF deletes or DPF remaps and stuff like that. But if you're in this guy's position, what do you do from here? It's had a new DPF. It's had a new NOx sensor. It's had a new DPF pressure sensor twice. It's had the boost pipe replaced. It's had regens and cleans from Ford and software updates. You name it. It's been back over the last few years, like once every few weeks, so he's telling me, and everything that can be replaced has been replaced, and within a couple of days it fails. So 3 or 4 days after a new DPF was fitted, and he said Ford did do it under warranty, but they wouldn't do it again under warranty because they said it's down to the style of his driving. So you're telling me 3 days worth of driving, no matter how bad your style of driving is, how short your journeys are, 3 days shouldn't kill a new DPF. But that's what Ford came back and said. They didn't say that it needed a new DPF again, but they said, look, we're not going to cover anything else under warranty because we now think it's down to your driving style, which I think is absolutely wrong. I don't want to say any bad language, I suppose, but there's no way in any world that 3 days worth of driving, no matter how short your journeys are, how incorrectly you're driving the car or van, that 3 days can kill your DPF. I mean, what sort of world are we living in where that can happen? These vans in the older models, I don't think have I ever seen one with a DPF issue, Euro 5 version. I don't think so. And it just, you know, you see all of these newer Euro 6s, and if I did see an older one, it's usually because, yeah, the driving style was bad. The guy's been driving, you know, 2 miles per day for the last 2 years, which would affect the DPF, but not over a case of 3 days or a couple hundred miles. It's just not possible. And or 3 days and maybe 50 miles to 100 miles, how could that kill a DPF? But it did. And yeah, like I was going to say, so what did this guy do from here? I mean, if you've spent all the money, you've replaced all the parts that can be replaced, what does this guy do? There's only 2 options. You either just scrap the van or try and get Ford to take it back, which they're not gonna. It's now out of warranty, so they're not going to do anything about that. It's not even in the warranty phase anymore, or time limit, whatever you'd like to call it. So what does this guy do? While it was in warranty, I would have probably tried to have them take the van back to say that it's not fit for purpose. The DPF on most of these Euro 6s, in my opinion, is not fit for purpose. Hyundai, I have had one a few days ago, P2002 code. It already had a new DPF from Hyundai. It had 18,000 miles on the clock. Okay. Then I had another Hyundai Santa Fe come to me, and it needed a NOx sensor, but it's fitted right at the very end of the car on the back box section. It's about 2 feet of the exhaust with a rear silencer on it. The NOx sensor wouldn't come out whatsoever, and when I did get it out, all of the threads came out with it, and I said, well, you know, it's not the end of the world, let's just get a new back box, 150 quid or something, and we'll fit a new sensor to that. No, it turns out, called Hyundai, the back box is £1,400 and they can't get it for at least 3 months. Then you get the ones like the Hondas. Yeah, we just need a simple DPF pressure sensor, £750 for a plastic sensor about this big. That should cost about £40. Some of these, especially the Japanese stuff, the prices are just ridiculous on some of the parts. But the Euro 6 stuff, whether it's Hyundai, Honda, Ford, Land Rover with the Ingenium engines, which is really weird, the Land Rover 3.0, I don't think I've ever seen a damaged DPF on one of those ever. You get the DPF errors come up because of the throttle body, but the DPF itself is not the problem, and it never has been on one. I don't think I've ever seen one with a problem. So in terms of the Euro 6s, which would probably be surprising to some of my viewers, when it comes to a Euro 6 car, I think probably the Land Rover 3.0 Euro 6 is probably one of the most reliable DPFs I've come across. And I have seen them, you've seen them on my channel with DPF issues, but not because of the DPF, because the throttle body, plastic throttle body is stuck, and that's causing issues. But you replace the throttle body, everything's fine again. You don't need to replace your DPF. So just because you say you got a DPF problem, like I'm saying, you think, oh, how can he say they're reliable? I've seen him fix loads of those, but it's never been the DPF problem. Yeah, the DPF has flagged up as getting blocked because the throttle body is not working, but the DPF itself has never ever failed. Well, I don't think I've ever seen one. As far as I can remember, I don't think I've ever seen one. But almost every other Euro 6 car I'm looking at is DPF failure, cracked, we've got soot in the tailpipe, needs a new DPF. And even with a minor amount of soot getting past, like I'm saying, on Euro 5s, the car would tolerate it, because if the pressure was good, that's good enough. But what they've done now is they've fitted these particle matter sensor, or a soot white sensor, at the exhaust, and if any soot gets past the DPF, it will detect it, and then you need a new DPF to fix that. So yeah, what did this guy do? Does he keep putting a new DPF in every couple of months at £2.5 grand? Or the only realistic option left here is to do a DPF delete, or get rid of the van, scrap it, because the DPF on these is just not fit for purpose. It doesn't work. If it doesn't work, what do? You don't drive the van, or you risk doing the DPF delete and drive the van. You might be able to use it. DPF delete is not something I do. I don't think I'll ever get involved with it, but like I say, I can see why some people, if you do need to use your van and you need to use it, and you know, without an engine light on, you need to get it through an MOT, because it's not in a fit state to go through an MOT like this. What do people do? I'm not advocating DPF deletes either, but something needs to be sorted out with all of these manufacturers. One thing I will mention is I'm probably one of the only DPF specialists, if you could call it that. I've never called myself a DPF specialist, because that's not really what my trade was. I'm just a mobile mechanic who does DPF cleaning. I'm probably one of the only DPF specialists, if you'd like to call it, that doesn't do remaps. Most other people who offer DPF cleaning and DPF specialists, they all offer a remap solution, or a DPF solution, which is remap the car, so the car doesn't recognise, or you know, they can delete the particle matter sensor or the pressure sensor, so the car doesn't recognise that the DPF isn't working correctly. Now, one thing I've always wondered about these, oh, we've lost connection somehow. One thing I've always wondered about these is if you left the DPF on there long enough, because strangely enough the van is driving, you know, okay, DPF lights on, and I've always thought to myself, if you did leave the DPF on there long enough, would you get enough soot build up and ash build up over some time, maybe 10,000 miles or more, to actually block back up the damage that's on the DPF, or the crack that's on the DPF, or the casing? So most of these Euro 6s, what I think happens, the DPF doesn't crack across the middle, it would, so the casing where the DPF sits, it expands, so the metal expands, and where the DPF sits here, it moves away from the metal casing, and then you get the DPF soot come past. I've always thought to myself, if would enough soot get in these areas, that would then turn into ash, partially block these areas back up where the DPF would start working again. So I'm not going to do any repair on this. All I'm going to do is just reset the DPF and let the customer hope that the light doesn't come back on, but it likely is, I suppose, because the only way to fix this for me to go forward is put a new DPF on it. And I'll tell you why I'm not going to get involved with that. For one, I don't really have the time. I've got so many bookings for DPF cleans, I just don't have the time to start ripping the DPF off of this. The second reason is I wouldn't get involved with it. Would I want to charge a customer, I don't know how much it would cost, 1,500 to 2 grand, maybe more if it needs the sensors replacing as well, for the customer to come back to me in a week or two saying my DPF's broken again. I want my money back. I don't want to get involved with that. Now with this van, because of the soot loading isn't high, I don't need to tell her it's got a new DPF, because the soot loadings are not above where they should be, so I don't need to get those reset. All I need to do for this, for now, is just clear the code, and if the ECU doesn't detect a problem again, the light won't come back. If it does, the light will come back. But again, that might take a few days of driving. So unfortunately this customer was looking for me to do some sort of miracle on this, but unfortunately that's not going to happen, because it needs a new DPF, end of story. So see you in the next video.